bullshit?
Interesting.
What?
Hello, welcome to the Football 360 Show. I am JP Rock here with Matt Bierman. Happy Tuesday to everybody, and you can catch us live on X as well as YouTube. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify. I had some people tell me they like the podcast version on Apple and Spotify, and also everything Football 360 is football360show.com. Catch us there as well. Matt Bierman, how you doing?
Doing well, getting used to the new seating arrangement.
Welcome to the new Show Me St. Louis set that we're on. I feel like we should have a kitchen segment. We should cook something, and I also
you
feel
don't want me cooking anything.
I also feel as though I should throw it to the meteorologist for an update on the weather, which today would be probably good. So we're getting used to our new surroundings, so if things are a little off, but we're talking football.
Amini's. Chesterfield Valley, I guess.
Is that it? Is that
with the furniture for the studio here?
Nice little shout out to
great people.
Amini's.
We actually train a couple of their children, so really good people.
Training for furniture. That sounds like a deal. Also, it's brought to you by KC Varsity Combine, happening May 4th at Francis Howell High School. We want to sign up quick. Time's running out. It's limited, but you don't want to miss it. Going to be some college coaches there. FCS coaches are going to be there. I know that I heard today Western Illinois is in, SEMO's in. Going to be there. Verified combine testing, one-on-ones, King of the Hill Lineman Challenge. If you're a lineman, you want to definitely check this out because it's really cool. It's at the end of the combine and end of the drills and everything. And all the campers get in a big circle. And the top 6 to 8 linemen just duke it out. And the winner, the last man standing, gets a WWE belt. Style belt. So it's really cool. KCVarsityCombine.com. Today we are joined with a man who's going to have his own camp coming up May 31st, June the 1st, correct, sir?
That is correct.
Judd Stuttgart, head coach of the Lindenwood Lions. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, JP. Great being here, Matt. Great to be on with you guys finally.
Yeah, we talked about it back in the fall, and then season was rolling, and now it's kind of a good time. Like it was like strategically thinking, like what's the best time to get you on because spring ball just wrapped, which we can definitely talk about.
Most definitely.
Setting up for a big summer, and you start talking about camps and combines. I think every week we've mentioned the mega camp.
Yes,
every week
we
talk about it because it's such a vital part of the recruitment. And the worst part about it is that I think, and we'll explain more and more about what it is, and you can really talk in detail, but the trouble is that sometimes when you have something like this in your own backyard, you almost take it for granted. And I think I've seen it on the other side when we didn't have it, where we had components of it. Yeah. And I don't know that kids, because you cycle them out every 4 years, they don't know.
Right.
Now these older guys that come back and they see it, every one of them's like, oh man, I wish we would have had this. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think it's one of those things that as we get into the details and talk through it, people really need to listen to what we're talking about because it is the one event you cannot miss.
It's been a game changer. And I'm telling you right now, because I'm on the road from now until July. I'm on the road. It is the best mega camp in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. It is the one camp I tell kids that they need to go to. So tell us a little bit about your camp coming.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the words. I'll tell you, first of all, what a great area. It helps to be in such a mecca of talent here in St. Louis and the amount of prospects in this area obviously draw a lot of attention from, what do we have, over 300, college coaches and over 150 different college programs from, Division III to FBS, that whole range. So, everybody that wherever their skill set is and everything, it's a great opportunity to really showcase their talent. And I got, Coach Baldwin, Brian Baldwin's who our camp director is. I got to give him a lot of credit for directing what I believe. I can say this because I'm not the one really directing it like he does, so I can brag on him. But it is probably one of the most organized, best mega camps in all the years I've recruited in all these camps I've been to. We've taken a lot of those things, my experiences, our experience of going to a lot of mega camps. You get a lot of disorganization, maybe one rep at one kid gets one rep. So we've taken all these things and try to construct a great camp. And obviously, Matt, elite. We got it. The organization is vital, and having just the testing that you guys do. I mean, it makes. I get compliments all the time. Your involvement, your help with your organization with the Elite's been huge, and it just makes for a really well organized day.
We love it. We love it. It is so much fun. I think you do hear the coaches, and I always like the time because there's a lot of stress going up to it, whether that's getting the shirts and getting the checkout right and the check-in process correct.
Check-in process,
and then
sure.
And then getting everybody flowing through, and it's just very well oiled, and it works. But it's like any competition, right? You get really like I treat it as if it's like, hey, it's a big deal, so you're nervous. But that first couple minutes when we get the testing going, and then you see all those coaches lined from the end zone to end zone, multiple deep.
Yep. Everybody wearing their gear.
Eye-opening.
Yeah.
And if you're a young man looking to play college football, there is not another place that you want to be. And I think the timing of it too, right out of the gate, that first weekend of the high level, recruiting when everybody's out, is evidence the schools that have come in. Like it's unreal. You start to see the list of schools. It's wild.
It's unreal. And we had, I think we have 14, 15 Power 5 or Power 4 teams there. That grows every year. It really is amazing. And I think it gives an example of across this whole country. Why are this many schools you're talking about from California to Florida, Canada coming here. It says a lot about the talent that we have in this area.
There is a lot of talent. I think that is the unique thing about it is that, you see a team like a UCLA or someone like that from the far West Coast, and obviously all the Ivy Leagues, the far Northeast, and then everybody in between. It speaks to the level of athlete and how serious they take the kids that they can find in this area. So, we are no shortage of talent, and I think that's an interesting thing because, and you could speak to this. I know we have kids that come in, from in our area. I would say kids out of our area are not overdeveloped, whereas some other parts of the country where you see football is like night and day different because they have like a full spring ball. They have a much more regimented, they have class in school where they're working on football. Yeah. I've seen where guys might actually kind of peak a little early because they've been exposed to so much. Whereas I think we have a good balance of athletes, and then the balance of football. They might not be as ahead of the game as they should be, but as they mature as young men, that they can certainly catch up.
No doubt.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head. It's funny, all the places, states that I've recruited, like you said, you go down into Texas and stuff. I mean, you can go watch a football period at period 2 during the class day. Right. I mean, they're full bore dressed out playing spring football, So to your point, I think one of the things, so I don't forget it, is so imperative is that people got to get registered. I think that's, if you kind of wait, when we get about a week out, that's when everybody starts, calling and wondering how come they can't get in a session. Yeah.
A lot of last minute Charlie.
Yeah. I would not. Yeah. We say it every year. We'll keep tweeting that message out. It's not really a sales pitch. It's like, hey, we're giving you advice. Get in if you want to get into a good session. Because it fills up. We already have some position groups that are already filled in some sessions. It just goes that fast.
It's unbelievable the number of phone calls that people will call. And it is interesting because there's a strategy that some people, because they're going to do both days. Hey, which one should I do, the morning or whatever? I mean, at the end of the day, I have not seen a session that is not packed with college coaches.
No,
I mean, they're there.
I think people
they're captive audience.
Yeah. If coaches are going to, sometimes because there's other camps and they, there's so many days coaches can be out too. And so, but I can tell you the same thing, Matt. I think a lot of people think that maybe the second day is not as good or anything. A coach, from each program that's coming will represent that day. They're not going to come, all this way and not, not have coaches there. So yeah, they're sometimes the opening day, the first morning session is fuller because they might have more of their staff there, but then that means some of those guys might head out to another camp, keep half of them here. But yeah, they're still represented, no doubt.
And there's staffs that will show up. The entire staff will be there. Like, like Minnesota comes to mind. Like they will bring, it looks like the entire, everybody. It's crazy.
You've seen this through the years as this is growing. I think, I think a lot of the program's head coaches that come, I think is a huge advantage. I friends of mine that are head coaches places, I'll tell them like, hey, I think it's good that you're here. I mean, I know Coach Drink's always been great about coming. He makes this a priority. You see a lot of some head coaches that come, some don't. I know Dan Lenning, he flew out here last year for it. It's of who they were recruiting here. So you'll see a lot of head coaches that show up. Some haven't come yet. I think that does make a big difference to kids sometimes when they see the head coach of a program here. So some have figured that out, some haven't. But it's fun.
It really is. And people do need to register. Like it is not a sales pitch. It is not. I mean, it's a couple thousand kids are going to show up. So you definitely want to reserve your spot. And if you're not doing that, especially I tell kids that are in our program working out, like, what are we working out for? Because at some point you have to put yourself out there. If you're the young guy, you're gaining experience. Yeah. If you're that rising senior or rising junior, it's go time.
And, I've told, because you'll still have, you'll have people call, or a coach, a friend, or somebody that wants to try to, hey, can you do me a favor and squeeze some kids in? We want parents, we want kids, we want coaches to understand we're doing this. The organizational part is for the prospects. The fact that they can get so many reps to showcase in front of coaches is because we cap it at so many numbers each session. That way they can get those reps. I mean, I think we've all heard the stories, where, a kid, they're fighting to get in line because they want to get more reps, and so they go cut, they do all these things. Well, we've eliminated that. That's why, it's important, and that's why we discipline ourselves and say, no, we're going to cap it at this number, because at the end, it's really just benefiting those kids for showcasing what they can do in front of college coaches. Yeah.
It works. I mean, you see it. I mean, if you're not getting reps at the mega camp, shame on you. Yeah. That means you have not stepped up and gotten your reps, because you're there for not a super long period of time, but it's compact. You warm up, you sit in the stands, you warm up, you test, you move to the field, do your individual, then you do your one-on-ones. I mean, and then I think one of the most critical components, and I think sometimes it's overlooked by the athletes, is, when you're done with the camp, you're kind of like, oh, got that done with. But the next phase is talking to the coaches.
Yeah, we always set up an area where as the next wave comes on the field, we want to present an opportunity for coaches to talk to the players, and because that's another part of it is being able to connect. And so so it's a well-rounded, well-oiled machine. Again, giving credit to my coaches and their staff,
do a great
and
job.
Our staff for how they do it.
Well, so as a head coach, and you're recruiting young men, we see stuff all the time, and in this environment, they're going to be coming straight off the field. But what are things you're looking for from a communication standpoint? Is it how they approach you? Is it how they can, just communicate? Like what are the things that, catch?
You're talking about at the camp?
Yeah.
I think it always, when you see kids walk up and introduce themselves, have some familiarity with the program, or you just make eye contact with you. I think there's a lot of, that can stand out a lot of times. I think kids, sometimes might feel like they're standoffish to go up and introduce themselves to the coach.
They're shy.
They're shy.
I get that a lot.
They don't, they feel like they don't want to, I think, as when you're recruiting, you're looking for leadership, you're looking for confidence, you're looking for these next potential leaders. And sometimes, the way a kid conducts himself, and they're all types. There's guys that are really talkative, and there's still shy types that walk up and just say, hey, thanks for for putting on a camp. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks for letting us be here. Yeah, there's always something special about that, especially when you're, kind of a guy gets your attention and then you kind of go up and talk to him and you realize, man, there's some intangibles here, just as a person, as a character, how they are in their character. It goes a long way.
So what are some of the attributes and things that you look for as a player on the field when you're out there watching guys?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on,
Position specific.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard a position specific, but we also want to see how kids do, how they do compete. I think, I think I heard a coach, last year that was kind of being interviewed about, asked for advice on what, hey, when you go to all these camps, what do you need to do? And he talked about, wearing flashy stuff, and so you get this attention, and you go, hey, you got to do what you got to do to get in line to get reps. And I'm sitting there going, I actually want to see how kids, the way they compete, the way they handle themselves at a camp. Are they out there? Because that's what's going to come into your program. So I guess it's all philosophical. It's all what you're looking for. But to us, I mean, those are the things that kind of stand out. When you see a kid that just comes to camp, goes to work, competes well, doesn't feel like he has to let everybody know that he did it. You kind of, it's like, those guys stand out to me. Now, I'm 54 years old. I think I'm 54. Yeah. It's always the year 24.
But you get to a certain age.
Yeah. But
kinda...
so I guess maybe, I still kind of find those types of things, endearing, when you see a kid just compete. And there's some humility with their competition and things I think that goes a long way with coaches. I think, because you're, how we see, a lot of stuff that we see this day and age is, there's, everything's about branding and all these kinds of things.
Yeah. And
sometimes that, those are, to answer your question, JP, those are things that really stick out to us, to kids, because, that's kind of, it kind of gives you an idea what they would be like in your program too.
Right.
I think one of the things you were talking about, like somebody actually being cognizant of the fact that you guys are putting the camp on and thanking you, like tells me that there's a connection to like the bigger picture. Like, and some kids sometimes are so focused on getting an offer or like, and what's the reason for getting the offer sometimes? Just to put it on their social media, which, I think that's probably the most dangerous thing for you guys is to like get a guy that really doesn't love football. So years ago, we had a kid that was getting recruited by Todd Monken. So sitting there watching him play, and the kid was a stud. Okay. And something happened. The ball gets fumbled. The other team's taking it the other way. And this kid who's already got the offer, committed to Oklahoma State, chases another kid down. It's Brandon Shepard's the kid's name from Parkway Central.
Since you said Oklahoma State, I know. Yeah.
Pulls the ball away from the kid at the 1 and tries to take it back the other way. And he said, that's the stuff you can't coach. He said, but what I think is interesting? He's like, I knew he would do something like that because of conversations I've had with him. He's a fan of sports. He's a fan of football. He loves to train. He loves just the process of being a football player. And I think that's the hardest thing is because there's so much social media and so much pressure to conform to what people think they need to be doing. And the reality of it is, it's a lot of noise that coaches might be looking at and saying, hey, that's great for someone else's program, but that probably doesn't fit with what we're doing here.
Right. Exactly. It's funny. I was thinking of a play this last season. John Harris, one of our former players, and it was with the Broncos last year, now with the Dolphins. But, I remember watching, it was either a Monday night game or it was a game that I could watch, usually sometimes during if it's an afternoon game or if it's not aired. But I remember watching John, and there was a play, it was a long run, and you could see as the end of the play, about toward the 5-yard line where they finally, and John was the last guy there to finally push the guy out of bounds. Well, he was coming from the backside in position, and I watched him. And I remember telling, I think Angie or my son or somebody when we're standing there talking, I kind of rewound it and said, that pursuit drill, that hustle, that passion for the game. John was a guy that just loved football, and he was quiet. He didn't talk a lot, but man, he just played every down. And, it was kind of cool to see, because sometimes, you get up to the NFL and, sometimes there can be a little bit of, you'll see some loafing and things. And I think John, kind of coming from a smaller college, playing because you had to, or because you just love the game. And it was a really cool moment when you see plays like that. And that's what can sometimes, if you're playing for a job, you're playing for the passion of the game.
Yeah, what's driving?
It was really pretty cool. Yeah.
A quick story about him. I went, I'd come over to the facility, did something, met with you guys, and went over across the street and grabbed a sandwich at Potbelly Subs. He was working there.
Oh, yeah.
And gigantic. I mean, he's a big guy. And we struck up a conversation. I didn't know him from Adam, and struck up a conversation, and could not have been more humble, just a good person. And then I started asking you guys about him, and everybody's like, oh no, he's the real deal. And then fast forward 2 years, he's in the NFL. But that humility sometimes is hard to find, because when you are the big stud and everybody tells you you're a stud, it's hard to humble yourself, right? And there's obviously got to be something more to life than just being a football player. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people feel as though they've been rewarded because they are just football players, right? And I think that's the tough thing with, in your position, I'm sure, is, I hear stuff from players that play in your program that we've coached, and coaches. Coach Baldwin used to coach with us many moons ago, mm-hmm. But stories and how you guys, what your viewpoint is about the game of football and what it is for these young men's life, rather than it just being all about football. I know there's wins and losses matter, obviously, but the bigger wins and losses clearly in life are what it's about. So maybe your perspective on, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what got you into coaching, because I think there's many reasons why people coach football, and I don't know if they're all they're pretty some are diametrically opposed to one another.
Well, it's funny because when I got done playing college football, I was at Azusa Pacific University, and I did finish I had about a semester left, and I helped coach my last semester since I was done playing. And so that was my one little stint of coaching. As a lot of people know, and have heard my story, my passion was go to Nashville and be a country music singer and songwriter. Right. So that's where I was headed. And so I coached and headed there to do that, and did that for several years. And it's kind of funny. I tell people all the time, I was so good at country music, I became a football coach. Right. So, but God's got a great sense of humor, and how he kind of worked me back into coaching was, taking that break, that kind of fall off of Nashville, kind of getting out of that, getting my name off of Music Row a little bit, and trying to turn around. We're going to go back and do it again the next year. I just helped a guy back in my hometown in Greeley, Colorado, coach his high school team, just to kind of, because I was going to be back home for that fall, and loved it. But then I went back to Tennessee, and then came back that next fall. That's when I Joe Glenn, the head coach at Northern Colorado at the time, who I knew, and I coached his son at that high school the year before, and he asked me to just come out and if I wanted to volunteer at Northern Colorado for the fall. And that's really where it bit me, just coaching young people, getting to know them, getting to know, and trying to be I love football first of all, but I think the relationships what is really where it really hooked me. It's kind of like, trying to, if you can be a difference maker in somebody's life. And I think, and then all of a sudden that turned into a graduate assistant position. And then I think, it was 3 years later, I was the defensive coordinator there. So it's kind of like you talk about, how quickly that all turned. And I thank God all the time for the opportunities that put me in that position to all of a sudden be placed in that, as a coordinator. And then when we made the same transition there that we're making here at Lindenwood, so from Division II to 1AA at the time, that one did not go very well, just because the school just didn't fund it. They didn't have a plan for it, and that caused our head coach to be fired at the time. And then I ended up at Mid-American Nazarene University as a head coach, which still, again, give God glory. I how that came about, my story, it could be a whole nother podcast of just, if people ask me all the time, yeah, I get it, it's cliche, God did. Well, there's too many things that happen where it can't just be that many coincidences, right? So
a good friend of mine, I think you actually did a Bible study with him, Dave Cook. He's in Chicago. He calls it the Christian coincidence.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things where if you take a huge step back, there's clearly no mistake, right?
Yeah.
It all happens for a reason. But looking at it from a, very close-up view, like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But you boil it down to something bigger is at play, right? And I think when you allow yourself to be open to that, right, things, you end up where you are, right?
Well, and I think it makes you look at things different. I didn't do that early in my career because we're so wired to win. And sometimes if things, if you're not having the type of year you want to have, then all of a sudden you start pressing, you start doing, maybe you're not talking to kids the right way. And, I think I learned, a lot. I think I looked at like this past season, our first year in, Division I, we end up having a really good year. We go 7-3. Last year, some adversity really started hitting. I mean, we started getting injured like crazy. We started losing, we lost our first 2 quarterbacks for the year. We lost our number 1 running back, cut 3 offensive linemen. Defensively, we start losing guys. And I'm kind of like, but one thing I started to notice as I was watching our team, I was watching how they were responding with each other at halftime. I was watching how that next week, how they were practicing together. And it started to hit me a little bit because I would kind of be seeing even some other places or even have friends in other programs that the team was kind of falling apart a little bit. And I was kind of looking at our program and I was thinking, our guys keep loving each other. They keep pulling for each other. You could hear them at halftime of games where if one side was struggling, offense or defense, and you'd see the guys over there saying, "Hey, we got your back." And it finally hit me at the end of the year. We've been blessed to have a lot of winning seasons. I mean, I think, I've had 3 losing seasons in my career. And unfortunately all 3 at Lindenwood. I think our first 2 years we got here and then our second year into this transition, but it's easy to say you got a great culture when you're winning, everybody's happy and it's like, hey, we got a great culture, but you don't really know your culture until you face adversity. You don't really know your true culture until you're up against some of those trials. And it really said a lot about our team and our players. And I think it's really motivated them coming into, this off season, because nobody likes the type of season we had last year. I'll be the first one to tell you it's no fun. But when your culture's tested like that, and I think you have to be intentional. The stuff you're asking about, Matt, I think you have to be intentional to do that. I think, you've got to have the 3 phases of what I call 3-dimensional coaching, or what I didn't think of it, but that style of coaching, the 3-dimensional coaching or transformational coaching, I think is what kind of leads to that, to being able to handle some of those types of things, being a relational type program.
So one of the things that when Brian Baldwin he was a holdover from the previous staff, so he had interviewed with you, and at that time he and I were talking quite a bit about because he's a young coach, just made a transition to college, and then there's they're exiting, and now there's a new staff coming in, and I will never forget. He called me after he had interviewed for the position, and he said something to the effect of, it was really interesting in the interview. He's like, coach said that, he wanted to, it was about the player's experience, and it just really caught him off guard. And I remember thinking, it kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, because a lot of times it isn't about, it's not about their college experience, it's not about their high school experience. It's about, what can you do for me to get me to go where I need to go? And I think that really stood with me from the very moment I heard of your staff and started to learn more about you guys. But I remember he called me, and when that conversation, that stuck with me, and it has stuck with me ever since, because it is rare in this world that you actually have people focused on the athlete and their experience and how they bond, and just what you talked about with, you know, win, lose, or draw, like what's the culture, how are they building with each other, because at some point we all are done with football as players, and what do you learn from the game, and then what can you do with that, taking it into your life. And I think, you know, we've seen the stories of people that maybe were the most talented that didn't really learn the lessons of why they were playing football. They were just good at football. And the unfortunate truth is that it's probably a really hollow experience for them, because they're the ones that will chase it probably the rest of their life, because they didn't get out of it what they thought they were going to get out of it, or what they should have gotten out of it. And so I think that starts at the top. So that comment that Coach Baldwin told me at the time, I know it got him. He's like, yeah, that's where I want to be. So then, of course, he got, you know, hired, and so the rest is history. Now he's running all the camps and all that stuff. So, but yeah, outstanding. Just such a neat experience to see that, and then get to live part of it with you guys.
But I was just going to say, you know, I was calling to let him know I couldn't hire him. I think if he told you, you know, because my whole staff was coming with us from Sioux Falls, and I was going down the list, and it's a terrible call to make, because, you know, I've been there before. UNLV, when that happened, you know, it's just tough. And when I finally got to Coach Baldwin, one thing that stuck out to me different is he kept talking about his players. You know, it's like he wasn't really selling me on him, like what he could bring to the table and selling his resume. It was about, hey, this kid. And it finally, as I was the more I talked to him, I'm like, you know, this is my kind of coach. Like, he fits right in with who we are. You know, it's about the players. And that's kind of, I think we end up talking for an hour and a half. And then I said, I'm going to call you back, and called Dusty and said, hey, I only got one position, running back position. And I said, Brian, this is all I got, but I want you, and I'll move you back to defense if that opportunity comes. And it finally did. He moved over to that. So that's the story. He always jokes about how he chained himself to the desk. He wasn't going to leave. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead and give us a little rundown. Talk about your staff a little bit besides BB.
Yeah. So great staff. You know, I've been, so my two coordinators, obviously, well, three, BB being a special teams coordinator, but, you know, we talked about him. He's been here for, with me the whole time now. So we're going on 8 years, I guess. So Dusty Havorkum, offensive coordinator. We'll be starting our 14th year together. You know, he was he was at Sioux Falls, played at Sioux Falls, played for Kalen DeBoer, who's now at Alabama. You know, so, and then Dusty, Ryan Grubb, who was Kalen's offensive coordinator at Alabama, or at Washington, who's now with the Seattle Seahawks. But, you know, Grubb was my offensive coordinator for 4 years, and Dusty kind of volunteered coaching for us at Sioux Falls. And then when moved into a full-time role, and then moved to offensive coordinator when Grubb left to join Kalen when they went up to Eastern Michigan. So we're all tied together, our staffs, with Kalen and that whole crew. So Dusty been with me for 14 years, doing a great job, been very successful as an offensive coordinator. Eric Inama, my defensive coordinator, we're going on 10 years together. You know, so our three coordinators, you know, I mean, 14, 10, and BB being 8, you know, we've kind of been there probably here Goose, Jarrett Grabb, my D-line coach, he probably has been with me the longest, because or with Dusty, because he played for me as a defensive lineman, then GA'd for me at Sioux Falls, and then we were able to get him on a full-time job here when we came to Lindenwood. So, you know, so a big core of our staff, like I said, 8 of us, 9 with me, it'd be 9 total. We all came here from Sioux Falls together.
That longevity, that continuity really matters.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I think, you know, I've loved to see, because I want my coaches, I want to help do my part. And if I can help develop, I think, I don't like that word. I mean, it's like, I guess it's part of my job is to help maybe share experiences, help be a part of that development process, because you love when you see guys go on to head coaching jobs and coordinator jobs. I mean, Coach Bresky, who's now the head coach at Black Hills State, you know, he was our offensive line coach here at Lindenwood, and he got an opportunity. You know, we've seen guys be able to go on. Brandon One of my old coaches, Brandon Anderson's now a defensive coordinator. You know, so it's fun to see those guys go on. But, you know, it is. I think it's very vital. I like to, you know, I'm real big about kind of hiring coaches that have been within our program, either as a player, because I do think we do some things unique, you know, that might be different than a lot of places. And you kind of, it's easier when you have coaches that kind of know your philosophical side or you know your program things that are important. We just hired a good example is Coach Brandon Johnson Farrell, who I don't know if you've met yet. He's our new wide receiver coach, but he was a graduate assistant for us up at Sioux Falls, and he's been up at Eastern Washington the last 2 years. And so when Corey Bethany was able to go be an offensive coordinator, and again at his alma mater at William Jewell, which is awesome. Again, I love to see those things because guys are going on and being difference makers in other programs. Gave us a chance to hire BJ back here, who was part of our staff at Sioux Falls too. And so, so that, you know, that's kind of the coordinators and Will Finley, our linebacker coach, you know, was a head football coach as well. A young coach, but had become a D coordinator, was a head coach. We were able to hire him last year. So he's been with us 2 seasons. And is doing a great job. Having that head coaching experience on my staff as well is always a great thing. As we know, Mark Goldenberg, who retired, he's got statues probably somewhere. He's been coaching at Parkway for so long. It's like, but you know, out of retirement, came 3 years ago, I think, and just asked to kind of volunteer to help kind of kill time now that he was retired, and we were able to bring him on coach tight ends. And then obviously with our move to Division I, we were able to add a couple coaches to our staff, and we were able to get Mark on full time. So Goldie's doing an amazing job for us as well.
It's good to have that local connection, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really good.
And I love, you know, I think a lot of college coaches really, I think it's sad that a lot of them don't feel like they make those hires from high school. I think they feel like sometimes, you know, it doesn't, you know, they stay in the college world. I've probably hired 4 high school coaches in my career, you know, when I was at Sioux Falls and here, because, you know, they're you know, football's football. I don't care what level you're at. I think sometimes college football coaches can get, you know, almost take themselves too serious, you know, like, and, you know, college coaches or high school coaches have to take the players they get in most cases, and they got to go figure out a way to coach them. You know, we get to go select the guys we have. So, you know, I put a high value on high school coaches, and I've been able to do that a few times in my career. And I know I'm trying to, you know, Denver Johnson, our offensive line coach, is a legend, a true legend. I think he doesn't like when I say that. He's you know, he's coached at, you know, 5 major Division I programs at Oklahoma State, Mississippi State, Tulsa, Colorado. You know, he's seriously is probably one of the top, you know, 10 O-line coaches in the country. We were able to hire Denver here a couple of years ago. He had to retire, was taking care of his wife at the time, and felt like he needed to retire to kind of help take care of her with her health. And then when Nita passed, you know, obviously he was looking back for getting back into coaching, and him and I had known each other a lot of years. And so when Bresky went to be the head coach at Black Hill State, you know, I was actually talking to Denver about another candidate, getting a reference from him, because I knew the guy coached for Denver. And this speaks to the character of Denver. I told him, he gave him a great recommendation. And then when I said, "So what are you up to?" I thought he retired. And he says, "Well, I'm looking for a job." And I said, "Well, shoot, man, I'm calling about," and he goes, "Well, you called about that guy. I didn't want to sabotage him." And so I said, "Okay, next topic. Are you interested in this job as coaching O-line?" And he was, and he came up, and that only took me about 22 seconds to hire him. I knew Dusty wouldn't care if I offered the job to Denver. And so Denver's been with us, brings a wealth of knowledge. And Coach Lawson, our running back coach, I know, you know, I'm looking around my staff table right now because I know I hate to, I don't want to forget anybody.
Yeah.
But good staff. Matt's got to know them. I'm real proud of them.
Awesome guys. I mean, it's really a family atmosphere. And to me, the unique thing is, come from Sioux Falls, you in that whole area, you've been all over, but St. Charles, Missouri is very unique, right? It's such a unique space because there's really a lot for the students to do, right? Great facilities. And it's in the middle of like a really good recruiting hotbed, right? So it's a really unique place. And I think what was that adjustment like moving here and bringing the family? And
it was warmer. It was warmer. I can tell you that. I think when Lindenwood called, we were just in the second week of the second round of the playoffs. I remember at Sioux Falls when I got a call from the athletic director asking me if I was interested, and he knew we were in the playoffs. And I think I was joking when I said, well, what's the temperature down there? I think we were probably -5 at the time at Sioux Falls, but no, I love Sioux Falls. Great place to live. I think we just kind of knew, location here, the amount of talent. I just felt like, again, it was something my wife and I had prayed about. We had, the last couple of years at Sioux Falls, we kept getting some phone calls from, I was a finalist at Austin Peay a few years ago when Will Healy was there, and it was me and Will, and the timing wasn't great for us then. But we started to notice we were getting some of those calls. So we honestly just prayed about it and asked for just clarity. And so when an AD calls you from a school and offers you a job, that's pretty clear, right? So I feel like we were obeying what God said. But, we knew my time at Mid-America playing against Lindenwood. See, when we were in the same conference in the NEIA days, we'd come over here and play. And I always remember just being blown away by Lindenwood's facilities. Even back then, it was just like, wow, these guys shouldn't be in NEIA football. I mean, it was amazing. So I was real familiar with Lindenwood because of those and if Nagel's listened, we did win 2 out of 3 against Lindenwood at the time, Mid-America. So that's for Nagel, just a reminder. But no, it always stuck out to me. And so when I got the phone call, I already kind of had an idea about this place, the location, and and we've never looked back. It's been awesome. And to be honest with you, I've had even a couple calls. When those calls come in once in a while, a place is special when you really don't even want to entertain those. It's just like, man, this is a really special place. And especially with the direction we're going, we just thank God all the time we're here.
That's awesome. I think my first experience in Lindenwood football was I was a little boy, Big Red, the Cardinals had a practice. So my dad took me over. And obviously the stadium looked a little different at the time, but I do remember it, the same sunk down, and the Cardinals were practicing, and we're 2 football teams removed from that point. But yeah, as far as NFL teams, but yeah, really cool. I think the Rams might have actually had a few practices there. Do you remember?
They did too. Yeah.
I think they did. So, but as you guys are looking to the future, like obviously St. Louis kids are a big component of that, right? Absolutely. There's a lot of familiar faces on your roster, but obviously you have to go far and wide to get what you need to get. But what are the, and you guys do a really good job in the fall and the spring, because you're just entering that period now where like blitzing and hitting all the schools and talking to the coaches. But I would assume the reception's really good. And this is not taking nothing away from past staffs. I think, the stature of being a Division I program now clearly, obviously elevates.
Yeah. How much has that helped?
It's helped a lot. I mean, just because we knew, we really made it a point when we got here is like, hey, we've got to recruit our backyard. We would, our first football season, we'd go play other people in our conference, and they'd introduce, I'd hear the starting lineups and everybody was from St. Louis, and I'm like, geez, we're from Lindenwood. I'm like, we're from St. Louis. Like, why aren't they on our team? So that always kind of, and so we really made it. But I knew, man, we would have so many close calls when we were Division II. We'd have so many close calls with like SEMO and Eastern Illinois and a lot of these 1AA or FCS teams, and we were Division II. Yet kids still, and every once in a while we would steal one, that would commit to us over them. But what was that box that they were missing? It was that Division I box. And so, to have with our location and our facilities and the school, I just felt like, man, if we've got that box to check too, we shouldn't, if a kid wants to play close to home, it's our fault if we lose a kid somewhere. Now, the reality is some kids want to get away, and you have that sometimes as well. But I think, last I checked, we were, over, in that 60 to 64% range of our team being within an hour of this place. And that's kind of what we've strived for. There's nothing wrong with recruiting other parts of the country. You have little pockets. We've had a little pocket because of Denver and Tulsa where we've picked up. It's good football in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to make sure we look. And I think fans out there, I think sometimes I don't pay too much time other than your guys' Twitter. I pay attention to, right? But you try not to pay too much because sometimes in the recruiting or somebody might say, well, I can't believe Lindenwood hasn't talked to this guy, or you'll hear that. Sometimes there's still other elements that people just don't know. There's academic elements. There might be something character-wise that people don't know. I mean, we're going to do our homework. So for the most part, I think we do a pretty good job of guys that are targeted as Division I players, at least getting them in our building and having a chance. And I think our staff's done a great job about it.
I think too, like sometimes people don't understand with like, say, like XYZ player, Lindenwood hasn't offered them. It could very well be that they don't know that the numbers game that you guys are playing, that, hey, last year we had 2 safeties, and we're not allotting this year.
Yeah.
Like we're just not like, and that guy doesn't project as anything else, or a quarterback, whatever it might be.
And a lot of it's needs based.
Yeah. And that's sometimes a hard pill to swallow sometimes when you have like one thing I really like about our future. And we knew, we are so young. I mean, we hardly graduate anybody next year. Well, now you're looking at a 25 class, and we've got offers out there, but you're kind of looking at, man, we're not really graduating a lot of guys. We're not going to have a lot of those scholarships. And that can get painful too, when you're kind of like, man, I want that kid. I want that kid. I want that kid, so it is based on that a lot. And you only have so many scholarships you can have kids on, that's what's hard.
I think that, again, people are not very cognizant of the fact that there are limits and there's constraints that are internal to a program. And it is based on, I thought when the NCAA made a big mistake when COVID happened and they allowed that 6th year, but they did not extend any scholarships. They didn't really add any provisions that would allow, other than, hey, you can transfer and you get an extra year. So now you have 26-year-old people that are well attuned to the game of football, and they're willing to stick around and play. That's a really tough deal to overcome as a young kid. But it seems as though, from a recruiting perspective, we've talked about this, it's starting to kind of open back up and normalize a little bit.
It's getting normal.
Right?
I always said that. I always said the COVID year was the year of knee-jerk reactions, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So
many.
It's let's do this. Okay, let's make it. Anyway, but no, it is finally kind of getting normal again, because you kind of had to cycle those kids out. I really give our president, Dr. Porter, who really, I love the way he feels about the students at Lindenwood and everything, and he was able to help us out a little bit with some programs did, some didn't. Some schools stepped up and said, hey, we're going to basically help with that last year, kind of a deal. And some did and some didn't, but we were really grateful, because it would have, and the hard part of our move to Division I is, with some of the kids at the COVID years, we tried to do, the reality is we had to bring in a different type of athlete to compete at this level. One thing I think why we had a lot of success in the D2 era there was we were able to sign a lot of FCS type kids. So we had a lot of kids make a good transition and competed well. And I mean, we won 7 games that year with a lot of kids that we were recruited under the D2 umbrella. But, you start seeing that we had to catch up quickly. And how do you do that? Do you kind of take an approach that you see some programs do, where they just, cut a bunch of people and they bring a bunch of new transfers in, or do you kind of recruit through into that? We've always said, and I'm proud to say, with this transfer portal era, we still are a high school mindseted recruiting philosophy. We want to recruit high school kids. We want to develop them. we fill in the cracks with transfers. We've always done that, but that's still a priority to us.
So I saw a stat last year, and I'm sure you would know this much better than me, when people were talking about the transfer portal. Leonard Wood's name continually popped up at the top of the list of one of the programs that had the least attrition, the least number of kids leaving the program.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to say this back when you asked about my coaching staff, and because I was going to bring that up because it's not really about me. I don't spend. I know everybody on my team. I got a great relationship with every player on my team, but to have a staff. Our first year, 2 years ago, we didn't have one guy go in the portal. We were the only Division I team that didn't have somebody go in the portal. And then last year, we had to place some in a portal to help them get other places as part of that transition as we recruited in. But it just goes to say, I can't speak enough about my coaching staff because, we still had kids disgruntled. We still had kids that were upset they're not playing a lot yet. What was it about the program? What was it about the school to keep them here? And we're kind of seeing that again, this spring. And so I attribute that to the quality of coaches that I'm blessed to coach with.
Well, we've been fortunate enough to hire a few guys throughout the year and have them work. And I think there's a good balance too, because they're good young men and they're able to balance, school, football, and have a life where they can, make a few bucks and do something fun. And what I always love is they're guys that show up. And that sounds crazy, but this day and age, showing up on time and just showing up sometimes for some of, let's just say,
or a lot of young people don't show up.
Like just don't show. And there's accountability, and I think that's the beauty of football. I know other sports are very similar, but I'm biased with football. But I think it's really good to see because their demeanor and just being good representatives of themselves and the program out in the community is really cool.
But I appreciate you, Matt. The other thing too, though, is we have a common philosophy when it comes to coaching, and that, and the other cool part, and I'm so grateful for you and your organization, the lead, is our guys go over there and they love the experience as well. I mean, they're still being developed there, and it's a great mutual thing. We do send good kids, but you guys do a great job. They love working for you guys over there too.
We love it. We love it.
Yeah. So tell us about, you just finished spring ball. Tell us about your team.
So, I like this team a lot. We felt like, we recognized last year, you kind of, we kind of knew, we kind of had a plan in place when we made the announcement we're moving up to Division I. You have to kind of, fans want to win right now. Fans want to do, but realistically, you got to say, okay, this is. So we put our direction together, and we kind of knew, where we wanted to be. We always said after 2 years we wanted to be right around 500 as a record, and I think we're one game under that. So we feel like we're on track when it comes to where we're at. And then the next step is, as we identified last year, where are we? Where's our deficiencies? What's separating us from the very good FCS teams to teams we feel like we can beat? And so we felt like we had to really address those needs, either through development of our high school kids, or yes, we did bring in a lot of transfers at mid-year and to answer some of those as we graduated some kids out. So I really feel like we addressed those things. We noticed that in spring football, in those areas, matching up in the secondary, for example, the size and the offense defensive line, we're starting to kind of look a little bit more like the teams we're playing. And then, quarterback development, we've got young quarterbacks. We got Carter, who's not considered a young quarterback anymore, but we've got to continue to keep that quarterback. With Cole Duggar not returning because the knee injury he had was just almost too tough to overcome for him to be back to 100% next year. So that did change our quarterback room. So we're young. We got to continue to make sure we get that one right too, because that's a vital part.
Yeah, quarterbacks seem to have a lot of value.
Yeah, and the other thing, because of our camp, because of our location, you talk about, and you'll see as our roster starts to come out, what you'll see with a lot of these transfers. Some of them have signed. Some I don't know if I can even announce yet, as we're still going through it. I don't want to get in compliance trouble, but you'll notice when you start to see our roster of the bounce back guys coming back home, from Division I places that now get an opportunity to play Division I football back at home that I think are going to make nice big impacts on our team next year.
I think too, like, and you made the comment about people leaving and going far away. My experience, especially like, because a high school kid doesn't quite understand it, but a young man that goes away to school and then comes back has that perspective to say, okay, say I lived in Florissant or I'm in Baldwin or Belleville. When you're at school in St. Charles, you're in your own world anyway. It's not like you don't have to travel to Oregon to get that experience because you are on your own. You're inundated with your college experience and class and football. And like, I think like getting away sometimes is somewhat not as glamorous as people think it is because, you are your own person and you're away from home. I think being out of the house, but still be able to go home and get a home cooked meal and get some laundry done every once in a while is a huge fringe.
It really
benefit.
is like a different world crossing that bridge in St. Charles.
Like
so true. Yeah.
I don't know that people put that, but then they get a little older and like, hey, you know what? That'd be great to be back home at Lindenwood. Like, it sounds really good.
Matt's ready to sign up.
Yeah. Too bad I got bad knees and
well, and I tell kids that in recruiting all the time. It's like, you don't have to go home. Like, I know you feel like, I got to get away, but I always say, I promise you, when you have one of those first long weekends where it's like, if you're sitting in a dorm 8 hours away, or man, it'd be nice to be home right now and so most of the time we can kind of convince that. I think we always talk about that crossing that bridge, and it's like a wall. You don't have to, you can spend a lot of time here, but it's amazing how many of them that worried about it spend a lot of time at home on the weekends.
Yeah. Right. That was like a huge concern.
Right.
There's great food. There's great entertainment. I mean, there's
within walking distance now.
Yeah, like
that's
that,
right.
That, and then the facilities, like the locker room, like last year, I guess for whatever reason, had not been in the locker room and we had to go in and do something. And, it's awesome. I mean, they got the kids' pictures, they got the light, everything's lit up. I mean, it is first class. And
that was that. Have you got to see the new monitors up at top of each locker room?
They
just put them in?
So awesome. I mean, and then the video board is like unbelievable. I mean, the thing's gigantic. It's like, I don't know what the size of it is outside in the stadium when they put that in. I was like, because I remember you first
86 by 37. So
you're a visionary because I remember you specifically standing on the field and like, we're going to have a board right here. and lo and behold, there's a board, right?
Right.
And so I think it's really interesting to see the evolution and kids, the kids, there are plenty of boys that we talk to that JP and I are in contact with that, Lindenwood is a dream school for them, right?
I'm hearing a lot more kids
really
say that.
Interesting because you hear people say stuff, and I think it's one of those things where like, hey, look, okay, yeah, of course you have the Mizzou, right? But how many kids is Mizzou taking from St. Louis a year?
Right.
2, 3, 4? I don't know. It's pretty.
Well, they'd probably like a little more, but yeah.
Yeah, but it just depends on the year, right?
It
depends on the year, and
They're doing well this year.
But I think you guys are in the same vein, though. You're not going to just randomly offer guys because it puts you in a tough situation if, say, you're just offering people to offer them, and there is no space for them. That's a tough conversation to have. So, same thing with Mizzou. Like, the same conversations to be had where it's, well, why haven't they offered so and so, or why? And it's like, well, one, you don't know their need. 2, you don't know the situation, and of course, they don't want to deliver on a local kid, right? Because there's relationships with coaches and all that stuff that goes in play. But I think you guys have really navigated it extremely well. There's a wide variety of kids from different programs, and I think it's only going to get better over the years. But I will. So we've brought this up on numerous times about Brady Cook's ascent to being the guy at Mizzou. But I will tell you, the Lindenwood staff was the very first staff that identified him.
That's right, Brady.
I watched it happen live at the mega camp, and it was one of those things where, I mean, he was so excited, and I think it was Dusty walked over to him and said, the offer goes out, and he's like, hey, I don't know if if I don't know if you're going to be around, but if you have other stuff, like I think you're going to get some other offers, but this is, we want you here. But it was one of those things where it was like, hey, look, we identified this guy. We're going to offer him, and if it works out, great. But he's probably going to have some other stuff. Lo and behold, the crazy thing is, Mizzou offers, and then the whole coaching staff change and stuff like that. But you guys were at the forefront of that, and it is oftentimes, especially with quarterbacks. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks get offered at the mega camp, which probably more than any other time I've seen, because quarterbacks are hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But the environment sets up extremely well for coaches to evaluate, because there's all the drills, and then they get to do the one-on-ones, and it's very obvious. I mean, a kid last year, Dylan Duff, did not play. He was at the Smith, did not play as a freshman on the varsity. Obviously, he was a freshman guy. Sat behind another kid as a sophomore. He walked on that field without having really any varsity experience and just carried himself extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watched. It's the MAC guys typically will be like, okay, hey,
right.
They'll pull the trigger.
They'll pull the trigger on the Miami of Ohio, and then all of a sudden, the Kent State.
Yeah, you had Duff, you had Hollis, you had Brady Davidson, I believe, all pick up offers.
Really, it's so cool to see, because that was the impetus for those guys recruiting to explode, really.
Yeah.
And I, again, being a football geek, like, you get to see that, and if you're doing it for the right reasons and you want to see people maximize their potential, and it is nice to see the kids get rewarded that have been working.
Absolutely.
Because it's very obvious when they're out there, right? I mean, you guys as coaches can see, like, hey, the guy that shows up that hasn't done very much and decides he's going to do some testing and put on some pads and go down and block when the linemen are going, that's a tough one.
You get exposed if you're not prepared.
Right.
Yeah, you can tell who's prepared. So, that's part of the process. And I think, I like to see the little guys. A couple years ago, I'd love to find who this young man is. He was very small. He was an 8th grader, going to be a 9th grader. And I remember walking over and I said, hey, I commend you for being out here, because you're younger and you're not as big as all these guys, but you fast forward a few years and you're going to be a guy. So I don't know
We'll see if he shows up.
I bet he does. So he's probably going to be a junior this year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of return.
So there's a lot of those returning guys that and I do. My advice is, if you have an 8th grader, going to be a 9th grader, get them in the camp.
Yeah.
They have to be, because you don't understand how fast it goes, because before you know it, he will be a sophomore, right? And then become really kind of a recruitable athlete.
Right.
That if they don't have that experience from that, that rising freshman year, it makes all the difference in the world being comfortable versus eyes wide open.
Right.
And I think there's a lot to.
Yeah, sometimes parents might ask, like, well, is it that important as a freshman? Are the coaches going to be watching? And I say, there's a chance a lot of coaches won't be. Your kid's only a freshman, but the experience they're going to get is huge.
Or they'll take a name down. They'll see him.
They might, like you said, that kid, man, I wonder what that kid's going to look like in 2 years. But if the kid's not there yet, just the experience factor of saying, oh, that's what that kid looks like. This is what I need to look like. This is what I need to do. It's valuable experience.
Right. So anybody who wants to get signed up for these camps, go to football.lindenwoodlionscamps.com. The Judd Stuttgart Lindenwood Mega Camp, which is coming up 31st and the 1st.
Yep, Friday, Saturday.
Correct.
Yep.
Great. So anything else? How can people contact you or find out more about Lindenwood football?
Well, obviously follow us on Lindenwood on Twitter and Instagram and all the stuff. I've got my Stug FB on Twitter. I'll be honest with you, I'm not probably great at all the others, but you can follow me there, or follow Lindenwood football is probably the best way to get all the information, or on all the social media outlets. We send all of our camp information out on all of our social media stuff. Our practice schedules are open, all those types of things, that if people want to come out and watch practices.
And if players want to do come by and take a look, or just reach out to the coaches, feel free to do that as well.
Absolutely. We love, guys calling and saying, hey, we're in the area, we want to pop in. Everybody, you can come on unofficial visits basically almost any time. So, I encourage people to do that. Great
information. Great news.
I was going to say, we had some guys come down from Chicago a few weeks ago for a lineman challenge. They came out to practice. JR, who runs the Midwest Boom program, was like, man, because funny
Great,
story.
yeah.
Back in the day when he was playing for the Rams, I used to help train him up there. We'd go up to the field, and he was in between teams, and then he was going to go back to the Rams. And we had numerous workouts. He's like, man, it has changed. Holy cow. So small world, you just never know. That's why it's keeping those connections open, right? And then he may have a kid in Chicago whose eyes were open to Lindenwood that day. So again, we're real thankful that you were able to give us some time here. And
I love it. Yeah, guys, this is fun
football.
to finally be on with y'all, man. It's been fun.
It goes by fast.
It does.
Glad to have you. Hopefully you had a good time. Went by fast.
Love it. Yeah, man. We could keep going for a while.
We really could. we could. This is gonna be an 8-hour show if we don't wrap it up. And I know Matt hates to wrap it up.
I hate wrapping it up.
He hates wrapping it up. Yeah, I know. He's getting rolling. Anyway, that'll do it for this week. Football 360 show. Thanks for joining us. KCVarsityCombine.com. Go there. You're a football player, your parent listening. Have your kid there. College coaches will be there evaluating players. I'm going to be there. Matt's going to be there. You're going to see a nice little elite chunk there. Going to be coaching some stuff. We will talk to you next week.